Welcome to the Influential CEO podcast, where we talk about all things high performance inner work and mindset, because we must be able to lead ourselves in order to lead a revolution and experience the freedom we desire. Welcome to another episode of the Influential CEO podcast. I'm your host, Stacey, Raske. So first, we're going to start opening today's interview with our influential insider moment. Before I even introduce today's guest, I would love for you to share in the comments what your most favorite recent episode has been, because we've been putting out so many phenomenal episodes with so many amazing guests. And I'd love to know which ones have resonated with you recently. So of course, be sure to like, review, and subscribe on your favorite platform. And be sure to download the Influential app on your favorite device. So joining me today, as we sort of pre-chatted about, I was like, I think I should call you the Cookie Baron at this point with all the amazing things that he's doing in the world. But there's so much more than just cookies in the world of Bennett Maxwell. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Stacey.
You're welcome. So before we get into all the good stuff, I would love for you to share what the influential leadership, or the concept of influential leadership, what that means to you.
Influential. I love the word, by the way. But it's a challenge for me. So I mean, the flow with the influential. I've always had. I did sales, and then you go from sales to being a sales manager, and then I quickly realized I was not good at managing, and it was a different skill. Since then, I've also realized that managing and leadership is different, because I still consider myself a pretty poor manager, but I think I've definitely been upping my leadership game. So the influential, what I've done in my company is really been able to step out of that day-to-day role, because I realizing that I'm not good at it, and then replacing myself with somebody who is. And in my case, it's Jill, and I hired her as CEO in December. The month we started franchising, I brought on a CEO who's took her own brand from 0 to like 700, just under 700 locations, and ran it for over 3 decades. So I guess to me, it's being influential, but recognizing what you're good at and what you're not, and stepping out of the way to allow other people who are better at, in this case, doing a franchising cookie company, and really letting them lead, and me chatting with them on the back end process.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. That's so smart. And that really is, right? Understanding like, hey, the best way that I can lead is by bringing in the people who do what we don't, and empowering them and appropriately delegating. And then really being influential is saying, hey, how can I support you to do your magic and genius to support this vision we're all working towards? So super amazing. So good. So I would love, before we get into talking more about cookies and solar and all kinds of stuff, I would love for you to share about, first, just who you are, what you do, all the kind of magic you're bringing into the world, and who you serve. And then, of course, we get into the backstory.
Okay. So I run a cookie franchise. It's fairly new. We started franchising in December of last year. So we're 7 months into it, 8 months into it. And we're at 90 stores that we are opening soon. So the first one just opened. We have another 4 over the next few weeks. My background before that was sales, door to door, and pest control, and satellite, and alarms, and security, and things like that. I'm from Utah, grew up here, have an amazing wife and 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1, that are in Mexico right now without me. I dropped them off at the airport yesterday, but they are a lot of what I'm doing with Dirty Dough is based on really my 2 daughters and the mental health challenges that statistically they are going to face. So anyways, I'm a very big believer in adding value as much as value as you can, building a company without worrying so much about, how much money I'm taking home today, but instead making a difference in the world and focusing on enterprise value. So that way you can have, a larger impact, and then you get paid when you sell if you do it correctly, if you build a very good company that adds a lot of value to a lot of people.
I love that. I love that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head on so many things, because it's really about impact and passion and purpose. When our drivers are coming from this, soulful, purpose-driven place, it's so much easier for us to become successful, because we have this calling that's so much bigger than just ourselves, which makes it way easier to work through all the BS and the sabotage and the stories that tend to come up and get in the way along the way, speaking of mental health. And I absolutely loved my time in Utah. I used to live in Utah myself, and I absolutely loved it. I worked in Orem. I lived in West Valley, and just the entire, and my mom was actually down in Hurricane. So all over the state.
Yeah.
So I loved it out there. So much to do. So let's talk about the backstory. What inspired all of this? Because you started to allude to, right, your kids and mental health, and, kind of what has been the fuel for all of this success and impact.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give the backstory of Dirty Dough, and then why I tied it into the nonprofit and the mental health push. So just over 3 years ago, I was looking at buying a franchise, and I was doing summer sales, which is big here in Utah. So you go out and you knock doors and you sell for 4 to 5 months, and I'd make multiple six figures in the 4 to 5 months. And I wanted to buy a franchise, a cookie franchise, to add on to that income. But the cookie franchise that I was looking at was Crumble Cookies, which is an amazing franchise, but they were already sold out in the state of Utah, and they require you to be owner operated, meaning I would have to move out of the state of Utah and give up my other career to run a cookie business full time, which just didn't align with my investment strategy. I didn't want to give up my other income. I was looking to add to it. So, but it got me interested in cookies, and it got me interested in the potential there. And it was fun. I like cookies. My kids like cookies. So what we did was, anyways, it got me interested. Then I went and did solar in 2019 for the first time. Loved that. Ended up teaming up with my brother, and we started a solar company a few months later. So that was January of 2020. And somebody else from Orem, speaking of Orem, so that's where I grew up, or I went to Mountain View High School, and somebody that I went to high school with posted and said, I have a cookie business. I do delivery only, and I'm looking for an investor to open up a retail storefront. So I gave him some money. He opened up the retail storefront, and then I wanted him to franchise it to me, living in San Diego. And instead of franchising, he said, you know what? I'm actually thinking about selling the company. And I'm like, I've never even worked in food before, but I just listened to a podcast that was talking about to create, go from being rich to wealthy, creating generational wealth. It's real estate, which I already had maybe a handful of properties at the time, and businesses, investing in real estate and businesses. I was like, I have a solar business, but I've never bought a business. Let's give it a go. So, and then I also kind of had in the mind, if I'm able to buy this business as a business, I'm running solar company in San Diego. This is a food company out of Tempe, Arizona, because that's where it was started. If I can make this work, then there's a lot of other people like me that are capable of, and looking for something similar. So I just have to make it really simple, really dummy proof or Bennett proof, because I didn't know what I was doing in there. But that's what got me into cookies. Kind of fell into my lap, and I'm like, I was already willing to franchise a cookie company. I'm just going to buy it and create the best, most simplistic and scalable food franchise model. And anyways, so that's what I've been working on. And to answer the second question with the mental health, about that same time, maybe 3 years ago, I listened to a podcast and Jonathan Haidt talking about the correlation between self-harm and social media. And at the time, I had a 2-year-old daughter and a newborn daughter. And statistically speaking, they're twice as likely to go to the hospital because of self-harm than they were 10 years ago. And it's just like, crap. Like, okay, then what? Right? What do you do? Right? There was no solution to it. It was just, here's the problem. And then it's like, man, that got me thinking about it. And then here in Utah, I had a cousin, 12 years old, suicide attempt in 6th grade, elementary school. Same thing, huge scare. Like, wow, how do you prevent that? How do you help people do that? Prevent that. And I heard an employee say, dirty dough means the dough's dirty. We focus on the inside of the cookie. And I'm like, that's really cool. So we started running with that. And we wanted to differentiate ourselves from the other cookie companies that focus on top of the cookie and making the cookie look perfect and pretty and put all this frosting on it, where it's a dirty cookie, and we do more mix-ins and more fillings and multi-layer cookies, because we know that the inside matters most. Life is imperfect and messy, but it's meant to be enjoyed, just like these cookies are imperfect and messy. So it was fighting against that stigma of, I live a normal life, but I see Stacey's perfect Instagram life, and then I feel bad about myself. It's like, no, that's not, life is dirty, and that's fine. It's totally fine that it's not perfect and it's messy. You can still enjoy it. So that's kind of what got me interested in that. And I'm like, okay, I think I can make a difference here with this brand, with this messaging. And we can get into a little bit more on what exactly we're doing a little bit later, because I've been talking for too long now.
No, it's amazing. I absolutely love that. And that's so true, right? The difference between making things look perfect on the outside or being in that energy of like, it doesn't have to be perfect on the outside. And what matters so much is what we're bringing internally. That is huge and so powerful. So powerful. And it's interesting that you bring up the self-harm piece, because, in all of the work that I do in optimizing leaders, in being more in flow, influential, all of the things, being able to lead, delegate, take back their time, take control of themselves, right? It is all of this self-mastery and self-leadership. And it's interesting to see all of the generations and upon generations of unhealthy coping. And now with social media and things like that, everything's amplified. So seeing the difference too, but when we have unhealthy coping, and a lot of that comes with boundaries and esteem, two things I had none of growing up, and seeing how predominantly males tend to express that outwardly, even though I know men who and boys who have self-harmed, but it's more of a self-destructive as opposed to self-harm, like reckless behavior and things like that. Where for myself and a lot of the women, or predominantly with women, will tend to go inward with it, hence the internal self-destruction of, so it was a lot of binge eating, binge drinking, those types of self-harm, all the way to physical self-harm and other types of self-punishment. And it's really interesting, the subtleties, especially around high achievers, high performers, that there's so many socially acceptable ways in which we actually self-punish and self-harm, and people don't even realize. And so, it's a lot of what I talk about around being high functioning as opposed to actually being a high performer. Our unhealthy coping with all of this old wounds and trauma ends up expressing in a way that creates a positive ROI, because we funnel that into control issues and hustle and workaholism and things like that. So we're actually creating a lot of success in the world externally. So we look amazing. But then we see so many of these, especially like obviously famous people, Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade and Chris Cornell, who again, right, it looks perfect. And then obviously we get to the place where they end up committing suicide.
Yeah. There's being in a sales background and taking on professional sales. It's all about diving in and to a concern, right? It's like, well, it costs too much. Well, what costs too much? Is it the upfront payment or the monthly payments, or like, what do but like really diving into the true issue there. And I don't think we typically do that in our own lives, right? It's like, well, I'm going to sacrifice relationships to work more, because if I work more, I'm going to have more money, and I'm then and I want more money to have more free time so I can travel. It's like, well, but why do you want to travel? Well, I want to be with my family. I want to bring them. Well, why do you want to be with your family? Usually comes down to, it's going to make me happy. And it's like, well, I don't know. I visited a few dozen countries, and I've seen people that aren't doing that are happy. So do you need all that? Like, are you going to go down a 40-year path trying to get all these things so you can spend time with your family, so you can travel, so you can be happy? Or can you just be happy by focusing on your mental health, your mindset, your attitude, and all of that? So that's really what I'm pushing for, because I've been going through that myself over the last year. I sold my solar company last year, and it felt great. And I'm usually a happy, positive person, but I was even happier at that time. But 2 weeks later, I'm working on a Saturday, and I'm like, I could be at the beach with my family. What am I doing? So I started self-reflecting, and anyways, and then that helped a ton with what I'm trying to do with Dirty Dough. And it's not about making more money, because I've made some money, but it's, how am I going to be happy, and how am I going to feel fulfilled? And that's giving back and making a positive impact.
Absolutely. Every single time. I mean, literally, it was one thing that we realized over time. Just all of the people even in my ecosystem, in my influential leadership mastermind, all my clients, all my team, nobody's money driven. Like, that's great. Obviously, we want to earn more money, but that's not the driver. And so I've noticed there's this huge difference in the quality of the people. Not that there's anything wrong with being money driven. There's like no judgment there whatsoever. I notice a different type of fire burning for the people who it's about the impact. It's about the freedom. It's about the fulfillment, where the ROI is, am I really living my life to the fullest, and also creating that legacy of impact along the way?
Yeah.
And
I would
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I would argue that the money driven people are after the same thing. They just think that money is going to get them there, but
Exactly.
we're all after that same thing. And so, like, how I define it, it's joy and fulfillment. Like, that's my mission statement, is to find joy and fulfillment in myself and help as many other people as possible do the same. So like that's what I'm after. It has nothing to do with money. Now, can money amplify that and spread the cause? Yeah, that's why I'm in cookies, because cookies are profitable. It's going to allow us to have a bigger impact, and it's fun, right? But that's not why we're doing it. I think the people who are still money focused, it's because they haven't asked well, why do I want money? Yeah. Well, why do I want that? Well, why do I want what money's going to give me? It gives, and they don't go through the full circle. And they're like, wait a second, I could just have that now. I can make an impact now, right? I don't need to wait and sacrifice relationships to have all that.
Exactly. Well, and what it is it's just flipping the be, do, have model of success from the old paradigm, where most of us are programmed that we've got to have the money to do the things to be happy.
Exactly that.
Yeah. And so they're functioning from that way of living. And when we flip the script around to, okay, I am going to be the person and leader I'm called to be, which allows me to know what I need to do to have the impact, the money, and the fulfillment I desire. And it's like, oh, be it, then do it, then have it. And everything completely shifts. And it really is the biggest piece I've noticed, though, is how many people actually block themselves from receiving that joy and fulfillment.
And I mean, for me, I didn't know why I was doing it. I'm telling myself one thing and I'm doing something different. So after I sold my company, I started seeing a therapist. I still see a therapist, and I'm like a huge believer that everybody should see a therapist, where typically it's like, well, if I have a mental illness, I'm going to go see a therapist. It's like, well, no, if life isn't perfect, which it's not for anybody, then you should go figure out your thoughts and your own psyche and why you do one thing when you say you believe in something else, and like figure out your mind, right? Because what determines your happiness and fulfillment and joy and drive? Well, it's your mindset or your mental health, right? So let's focus on that. So I've been doing that for the last year, and I sought help rather than trying to figure it out all myself.
And that is the wisest thing you can do, because when we're down in it, we don't have the perspective that we need to figure it all out on our own. And that's why therapists and coaches and mentors are so vital in completely elevating and shifting our mindset to match not only who we're called to be, but what we want to do and create in the world.
Yeah.
And that is so, so, so awesome, right? I have gone back to therapy myself after my move. It was like, oh, wait, time to get back into the therapist. So I've got like a bazillion coaches and mentors, and I still go to therapy because it's like, they're all different. They work well together. And that's exactly it. We've got to understand how we function, because at the end of the day, joy, freedom, and fulfillment is 1000% internal. It doesn't matter what conditions are happening externally, but if you're in that way of a living and leading, then that's what we have.
And it's hard because, like, for me, I was like, a therapist. I will never see a therapist, like I grew up thinking anxiety, depression, even headaches. Not, kid you not, like if you had a headache, it's because you had a weak mind. Like that's what I grew up, just completely ignorant, right? But especially as a man, it's like nobody wants to admit that they see a therapist, and it's like, but why? Like I said that on a podcast that I was on recently. He's like, I've never had somebody admit that they see a therapist on podcast. I was like, well, that's probably a big issue then. Like, why are people ashamed of that, to say that they want to live a more fulfilled life, and want to understand themselves? Like you said, I have a business coach. When I go to the gym, I have a trainer. But why wasn't I working on my mental health? Because what's more important, my mentality and my mindset versus my business versus my physical health? Well, they're all very important. But if I want to be happy, it's the mentality and the mental health that is most important, at least in my opinion. But yeah, there's such a big stigma, and it's like, oh, and this, and I don't want to go. And how do you find one? And I went through all of that. And then how do you pay for one? And it's like, I pay $10. It's like 100 and something bucks. My insurance pays for it. I pay $10 a time. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. So anyways, it's been great.
I love it. That is awesome. And it is, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. Why not get to know ourselves better? Because it is 80% of our success is completely internal. We're not going to be consistent in showing up to take care of our bodies, if we don't have our mindset and our relationship with ourselves in a good place. And we're definitely not going to show up to lead our businesses in the way that they're called or need us to be as the leader or delegator or, whatever capacity of leadership that we're bringing to the table to navigate communicating with team members and managing our time and our energy and all of the resources that we need to be in control of, especially our emotions, because, otherwise we're just constantly reacting and putting out fires, and that's just not gonna help. So, all right, we are going to take a quick break, and be sure to come back as we continue this powerful conversation. See you in a minute. Go deeper by grabbing your copy of my best-selling book, Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch, by going to firethatbitchbook.com. Welcome back to this powerful, powerful mental health and success conversation with the amazing cookie baron of Dirty Dough, Bennett Maxwell. I love how transparent you are about that. The fact that the conversations around mental health and self-care in that way are becoming more and more common, that it's okay, that's okay. It's removing the stigma, right? Because there was a lot of judgment and shame around asking for help.
Yep. Yeah,
How
it's
are you?
like we're expected to have it all figured out already. And especially, I think it's a little, it affects everybody. But as a man, I think it's a little bit more like man up, right? Like that's what I learned when I was a kid. Like, man up. Like you don't need help. You just need to figure it out, or you're not a man. So, which is so stupid. Like that's just so dumb. Like, what do you mean man up? Like, why can't you get help? Everybody helps each other and everything. Like, anyways. So it's definitely a challenge. And in general, it's just mental health is typically reactive. You start seeing a therapist if you have anxiety or depression or a mental illness, when it's like, well, why not be proactive about it? How come nobody's doing that? If mental health is key to happiness, why are we waiting till we have an issue to seek help? So that's really what I'm trying to change is just like we go to the gym every week or multiple times a week, we need to be working on our mental health, whether that's a therapist and or meditation or learning about happiness mindset and breathing exercise. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do to figure that out that we just don't do.
It is interesting. I see that all the time. It's how resistant people are to doing the inner work, to looking inside to solve whatever the problem is that they're experiencing. As somebody who specializes in that high performance inner work, or
Yeah.
the mental unfuckery of, generations of
Yeah.
social and family programming, refining those skills. It is interesting to see the dichotomy, because there's some who are like, they get it. They're like, okay, every time I hit that roadblock, I recognize I'm playing out cycles and patterns. It's time to go back to doing that inner work, not just chasing the strategies, the external strategies, in their business or for their teams or things like that, because that's just patching the symptoms. That's the Band-Aid. But it's always every single one of those external challenges is a mirror reflection of something going on internally. And so, I'm always about go to the root. Quit patching symptoms and having the same problems and going through the same cycles over and over and over again. Go right to the root, heal, process, release, address, whatever it is, shift, elevate skill sets and strategies for self-mastery, mindset mastery, self-leadership. And then there's this powerful cascade that happens of, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, all of your relationships are better. Your business
Yep.
is better. Your all the problems you have with your team, for the most part, are ironing themselves out because we're communicating better. We're more emotionally available for the things that we desire.
Yep.
It's amazing. And
Oh,
I see so many of these leaders, and they're in massive struggle busts too, like completely maxed out on time and energy. They're burning the candle at both ends, juggling all the things, not fulfilled, not satisfied, working for quote unquote freedom. And yet they're a prisoner to their business and or life. And that's not a pain point enough still for them
yeah.
to say, oh, I can do something different.
And I see that a lot. And anyways, there's a book called The E-Myth, and that was a life-changing book for me. And because it tells you a harsh truth, or at least what I consider a truth. And same with the book. If you own a business that requires you to be there every day for it to make money and run, then you're not a business owner, you own your own job. And it's not a great job. It's a shitty job because you work the longest hours and you get paid last. So, but most of us business owners, like, it's so hard to let go of control because we could do it better ourselves. But kind of going back to the start of the podcast, allowing ourselves to step aside, and yeah, maybe somebody does it 50% as good as you, but at least you can double your time now or triple your time, or you can hire somebody. If you hire the right people, you can hire people that are more effective than you, which I've definitely been lucky enough to do. So I've definitely see that with people getting trapped in their own jobs because they don't want to expand. So if anybody's there, which I think is most people, read that book. That's what allowed me to do my I started my solar company, tried out solar for a few months, liked it, started a company, and then 18 months later was able to sell it because I did the E-Myth strategy. And you can even watch a YouTube video, 10 minutes, get the gist of it and start implementing that. And I've been doing the same thing with Dirty Dough, and it's also helped a ton. We just raised money at a 50x valuation of when I bought the company the previous year. So within, it was like probably 18 months, maybe 15, 16 months from the time I bought the company to the time I raised the money, with the valuation 50x, because I stepped out and I put people in place to be able to expand the business. So anyways, anybody out there that hasn't heard that book, and it's stuck, go read the book and apply it, because it's life-changing for sure.
And you hit the nail on the head, right? It comes down to control. It is the unhealthy coping that we've learned through our lives to create the safety we're lacking because we don't have boundaries. So I always talk about this. I teach this all the time, that the biggest wall we have is our control issues. And that is the biggest limiter to our success. And that's it right there, right? Being able to let go of control, have healthy boundaries, which means responsibility, expectations, accountability for your team, for your people, and being able to effectively delegate and let go of control, because we are the ones that get in the way when everything comes back to us. We're not going to be able to scale. And that's what it means to be influential, that you step back and let go. Like, it's focus, it's flow, and it's letting go.
No, that's definitely the key. But who's here to teach us that? Until we have to figure it out ourselves or read a book, right? That's the hard part. It's like, oh crap, I should have been doing that forever ago.
It's literally how I became specialized in teaching that exact stuff, was because I did not have that skill set myself. I had to start finding those coaches and mentors to teach me, because I have my rock bottom moment. I'm like, oh, wait. Oh, okay. I hate myself because I'm trying to control everything but me. Yeah. So it was literally hiring mentors and coaches to start figuring out how to build a relationship with myself, to stop trying to control anything externally, start taking control of me, mastering my time, energy, and emotions, building those boundaries. And it's like, oh, look at how things change. Lose half my body weight, be able to save my marriage, create a successful business empire, right? Like, grow the team, all the things, and do it in that place of freedom, fun, fulfillment.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. So good. Now, with all of the stuff that you've been doing, now you also have a nonprofit. Is that?
Yeah, we're still creating it. So the nonprofit is kind of going back to the mental health. Like, how can we actually put our money where our mouth is, right? So the messaging with Dirty Dough is the inside matters most, right? Life is imperfect and it's messy. It's meant to be enjoyed. So like, our company mission statement is my personal mission statement with 2 more words in there, but it's to find joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness in ourselves and others. Right. So throwing in the dirty in there, but we don't need to seek that perfection. So how do we, other than just giving a positive message, how else can we affect people? Well, we need to teach them and educate them. And who? Well, we need to start at kids. So the goal of the nonprofit and what we'll be doing is calling schools and saying, hey, do you guys have you ever heard of a wellness center? And most of them have, because they're popping up all over the country. And what you're doing is you're converting an old classroom into something brand new that doesn't feel like school anymore, but it's all focused on the proactivity of mental health. So, hey, if you have the classroom, we'll fund it and we'll provide the program. You just need to have the classroom. And then we call Stacey and say, hey, the middle school that you went to, they have a classroom and they're willing to convert it to a wellness room. As corporate, we're going to put up a few grand. We want you to put up a few grand. Then they're going to drive traffic to your store. And we're going to do a fundraising night. And then we're going to send out an email blast to all the parents, let them know what we're doing with an Amazon wish list. And then they can go buy the paintings or the couch or the diffuser, whatever's in this wellness room to get people involved. But we have 4 methods of raising the money. And these are like $10,000, $15,000. So they're not that expensive, especially when you're raising money with the 4 people. And then we have a wellness center now that kids can come in, take a break, and learn about coping mechanisms and learning how to let go of the past. You know, they could grab a tablet and see what it's like to live in the moment and be present, and guided meditation and happiness mindset and breathing exercises and changing your physiological state. So we want to build these in K through 12 schools with the goal of building at least 1 wellness center per franchise that we open. So right now, if we've done 90 in 8 months, I think we can get to 1,000. I mean, that's the goal, 1,000 of these and at least 1,000 wellness centers, so we could make a really big impact and teach kids of all ages on how to be proactive with the mental health.
I absolutely love that. And actually, when we wrap up, I am going to make sure that I connect you with someone who's on the mental health board for the state of Utah. And
awesome.
Somebody who also has a nonprofit that focuses on supporting youth in Utah.
I would love that. Yeah.
He was a guest. Sean Vieira was a guest actually on my show recently. And that's what he's doing. So I think you two definitely will make some magic and impact in the world, collaborating in that same purpose and passion. So I think it'll be
for sure. No, I'd appreciate that. The whole model of Dirty Dough, or of anything that I do, is just about connecting with the right people for sure, and putting our minds together and seeing what's out there. Because we've developed what I consider the most simple and scalable food franchise model that exists out of any food franchise. And that was, did I develop it? Yes and no, kind of, right? It was really just, I told 100 people my idea, and every time my idea got a little bit better because they gave me valuable feedback. And then I went and cross-checked it with somebody else who either validated it or challenged it. And I kept doing that till only the good ideas stuck. Then we implemented it, and it's been going really well. So mental health side and the nonprofit, I know it's going to be the same. It's just getting connected with the right people who know more than myself.
I love that. Well, I think the perfect summation of our entire conversation today really is success is not a solo sport. You know, from being willing to be proactive and get help, you know, through therapy, investing in coaches and mentors, and just putting our things out there to get that feedback from other people, right? That you were open to that, the positive and the constructive, and allowing it to be this malleable thing that really was collaborative, you know, with so many people being a part of it, and that none of us are here alone. Ever. It's always about being willing to ask for help, and more importantly, being open to receive it.
Yep. Yeah, the connections that we build are so key to any success, right? Whether that's success in the family or financial or just your overall happiness level. Definitely the relationships are what it's all about.
Always. So good. So I am certain people are going to want to connect with you and learn more about you and Dirty Dough and all the things that you've got going. So where can they find you online?
My website. So BennettMaxwell.com, BENNETTMAXWELL. So right there, you can follow me on social media. I try to put up good content, try to provide as much value as I possibly can. You can also look into the franchise opportunity, inquire about that, get some more info. So yeah, that's the best spot to connect with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. Any final thought before we wrap up?
No, I love the conversation. I like that we didn't go in. Usually it's like, what have you done with Dirty Dough? Have you sold all that? But we went completely off of it, and I liked it because what we talked about is vastly more important than building a very scalable business, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Because no matter what we do outside, we're always with ourselves. So
Yep.
I've gotten that feedback a lot. I get guests on here who are like, oh my gosh, I get to talk about things I never got to talk about elsewhere.
Yes.
And then I hear that from the audience who follows people all the time. And they're like, I just learned something completely new about somebody I've been following for years because we get to talk about other stuff here. So
Yeah. So I've really appreciated that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. It's just been an amazing, amazing conversation. And for those of you listening, of course, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review if you enjoyed our conversation today. And download that Influential app so you always have this podcast and all our other exclusive resources right in your pocket. And remember, as always, you are enough. And I will see you in the next episode.